mine. The bus driver was out cold. His arms were tied behind his back. There was a t-shirt stuffed in his mouth. It was so rude. Something you'd do to an animal. I took it out so he could breathe. Miss Creaser's hands were tied with a blue scarf she'd been wearing. He'd obviously hit her on the head too, but somehow it was the scarf that really scared me. It seemed particularly cruel to tie someone up with their own scarf. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. I guess I wasn't thinking straight. Everything was so weird. My body was moving all fast and jerky, but my brain was like jello. I pushed the hair away from Miss Creaser's face. She had a big gash on her forehead, but she was alive. She opened her eyes a bit and groaned. I didn't know what to do. I realize now I probably should have tried to use the bus driver's radio or even run for help, but I didn't. I just sort of shook for a while and wondered what the guy was going to do when he caught me. I needed Miss Creaser's help. "Are you all right?" I asked, which was kind of stupid. She was lying in a pool of blood. Clearly she wasn't all right. I was just about to untie her hands when I heard the guy go, "And nobody move. I mean it. I'll be back in a second to, finish our tour." I looked out the window. He was coming after me. I tried to untie the scarf, but I couldn't get my fingers to work. I was shaking too much. "I'll be back," I said, though I really wasn't sure that I would be. Miss Creaser was nice. I didn't want to leave her without any hope. I was just about out the door when I remembered the Kleenex. I grabbed some from the first aid kit and slipped out. I don't know how the guy missed me, but he did. I managed to run around the back end of the bus and make it look as if I was just coming from the house. I tried to sort of stroll out, act casual. I don't think I looked very convincing. My legs were like gummy worms. "I found some," I said. I waved the Kleenex in the air, but I couldn't look at him. I was so freaked out, I would have given myself away. I wiped my nose. "Took you long enough," he said. I was starting to get worried. Then he grabbed my arm and half pushed, half carried me back to the barn. "I wouldn't want you to miss the rest of the tour. We're getting to the good part," he said. "The slaughterhouse is next." Chapter 8. The guy was still smiling when we got back to the barn. It was like he'd loosened up and was starting to enjoy himself. I knew that couldn't be good. All I could think was, why did Mr. Benvey decide to take us here? He knew Mr. Van Wart. He told us that. He told us they got together all the time to talk about farming. Mr. Benvey must have suspected there was something wrong with him. I mean, all you had to do was look at the guy. I'm not talking about the tattoo or the gold tooth or the shaved head. My half-sister's boyfriend has all those things and a lip ring too. He's okay. Even my grandmother likes him. But this guy, it didn't matter how much he smiled. His eyes still gave me the creeps. I couldn't figure out how Mr. Benvey would have missed that. Had the guy been hiding it before? Had he put on a good face for Mr. Benvey just so he could lure us here? And what? What was he going to do to us? Why would he even want to do anything to a bunch of kids? It made no sense. The guy had the pitchfork in his hand and he was smiling away like a camp counselor. He said, "All right, come on, everyone, get going. Nothing much happens in the barn, but I think you're really going to find this next building interesting." If he hadn't called one of the girls baby doll, he would have sounded like a regular teacher. I was terrified. I wanted to tell someone what I saw, but who? Who could I tell? It's not like I had any friends in class. If I walked up to someone and started talking, they'd probably scream and run away. No one wanted to get near Pigboy, especially after that sneeze. And even if someone did let me near them, I wouldn't have a chance to say anything. The guy was watching every move I made. He had a pitchfork. I didn't think he was the kind of teacher who'd let you get away with whispering in class. The building was just a log cabin with boarded-up windows and a wooden door. The guy unlocked it and smiled at Anna McCrae. "After you," he said and winked. You could feel the cold and dark pouring out of the door. People kind of hesitated to go in, but he nudged them along. "Come on, hurry. That's it," he said. "There's something inside I want to show you." Everyone was almost in when Anna screamed, "There's a man in here. He's bleeding." Things happened really fast after that. Some kids rushed in to take a look. Others tried to get out. The guy started pushing people in with the pitchfork. Everyone was screaming and crying and scratching and panicking. Somehow he didn't notice when I ducked down and scrambled away on my hands and knees. I ran around the side of the building. I was just waiting for him to come after me. The guy slammed the door and pulled down the latch. He locked it with a key. Then he walked away. The screaming didn't seem to bother him at all. It was the first time in my life I'd ever been glad I was so skinny. There was a little bush in front of me. I pushed myself flat against the side of the log building and prayed the guy couldn't see past it. He only looked back once. There was this loud noise. I guess someone inside was trying to ram the door open. There was no way they were going to get through. The guy just laughed and kept walking. I wanted him to keep walking and walking and walking. If he left for a while, maybe I'd be able to get the door unlocked. I thought if we all stuck together, maybe we could overpower him. Who knows? Maybe Shane's mean streak would finally come in handy. More likely, Shane would be so delighted to meet someone who shared his interest that he and his new little friend would overpower us. The guy didn't keep walking. He leaned against the fence and pulled out a cigarette. It took him about 15 matches to get it lit. By that time, he really needed a smoke. He was still hauling away on the cigarette when a phone rang. I jumped, but it didn't surprise him at all. He didn't even look around for it. He pulled a barrel up beside the barn and climbed on top of it. He felt around in the gutter. He pulled out a cell phone. Yeah, he said. He listened for a while. I couldn't hear what the other person was saying, but I could see it was making him mad. I'll leave the swearing out. His face was practically purple. He said, "Don't give me a hard time. Ain't my fault. How was I supposed to call you? You were the one who said only one guy would be here." He listened some more. "Well, you were wrong, weren't you? A bunch of kids, that's who." "No, not 2 or 3, 20 or 30, and a teacher and a bus driver, too." He laughed. "But I took care of them. No thanks to you." The person on the other end of the phone said something. The guy went wild. He said, "Don't tell me to calm down. You calm down. I got to get out of here fast or I'm dead. The cops are going to figure out what's up." He butted his cigarette out with his foot. "So what am I going to do now, genius?" The guy was pacing around the barnyard like he was a bull about to charge. He had this weird thing happening with his neck. It was creepy. He was twitching the way people in horror movies twitch just before they morph into bloodthirsty killing freaks. He was going, "Of course they've seen my face. How was I supposed to hide my face from 30 kids? They think I'm Vin Wart, or at least they did till I locked them up with him." I know it sounds stupid, but right until that moment, I did think he was Vin Wart. I just figured living way out here by himself with no junk food or TV must have made him nuts. I know it would have put me over the edge. Watching him now from my hiding place, I realized the guy didn't just have a bad day and lose it. It must have taken him years of practice to get that crazy. Next to him, Shane looked like a Sunday school teacher, a real amateur. "I told you, I can't have no witnesses," the guy was saying. "I ain't going back there." He listened for a while and then did that weird twitchy thing again. He laughed. "Yeah," he said, "I guess I could do that. I'm pretty good at arranging tragic accidents." Chapter 9. I didn't like the sound of that. I didn't like the sound of that at all. People get hurt in accidents. People get killed in tragic accidents. I hated to think what that guy had planned for us. He listened for a while more, then snapped the cell phone shut. He twitched again and disappeared down the side of the barn. I had to make a run for it. I didn't know when he'd be back or what he'd have with him. A knife, a gun, a bomb. My imagination was going crazy. I darted across the barnyard. My feet barely touched the ground. I crouched behind an old green wagon and caught my breath. I couldn't see the guy, but I knew he was still behind the barn. I could hear the pigs snorting away at him. Those poor animals were sure starved for company. They went nuts when anyone came near. The bus was closer than the house, but I was too scared to go inside it. If the guy came back around the corner, he'd see me. If he came into the bus after me, I'd have nowhere to run. I'd be dead meat. I had to get into the house instead. Maybe there'd be a phone there. I didn't even try to hide. I just went for it. I ran as fast as I could from the back of the cart to the front of the house. Then I stopped. I stood still. I listened to hear if he'd seen me. No footsteps, nothing. I finally took another breath. I was okay. I'd made it this far. I opened the door. It was unlocked. I snuck into the house. It was really peaceful inside. Not just quiet, but peaceful. You knew that the person who lived here never left his clothes on the floor or played air guitar when he thought no one was looking. The place felt like an old lady's house. I tiptoed into the living room and got this weird feeling. It was like I'd been there before. I knew I couldn't have been, but why did everything seem so familiar? I looked around. Wooden floor, wooden chairs, wooden table, one of those little rugs people make out of rags, a couple of old kerosene lamps, a fireplace. It hit me. I knew where I'd seen this place before. In the museum. This was exactly like the early colonial room they have in the historic homes section. We get dragged there every year. All this place needed was a rope across the door and a tour guide in a long dress and an old fashioned hat. I knew there would be no phone in a place like this, but that didn't stop me from looking. I guess I just couldn't give up my only hope. It was like I had two different brains, each one telling me what to do. One was saying, must find phone, call for help. The other was going, don't even bother. The guy lives like it's still 1895. There's no phone here. There's no Kleenex here either. Get out, run for it. I just sort of ran around in circles like an idiot. I didn't know who to listen to. I probably would have run around in circles all afternoon if I hadn't heard the back door open.